You are listening to the Hammersley Brothers e-commerce podcast. Like what you hear and want to take the shortcut on your e-commerce growth? Join hundreds of brands that work with us and head over to joinhb.com. That's joinhb.com and see how we can help you further. Join our members and smash your targets and unlock the profits within your e-commerce site. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm well. I think it's excuse me. I've just got a frog in my throat there. I think it's the first podcast of the new year.
Is it?
Can't be.
No, I think we've done one.
Well, it's quite late in January. Have we?
Yeah, we did one, and then you missed last week because you went skiing.
Oh yeah, went skiing. Yeah, it's young man's game. Skiing.
It's hardcore, isn't it? For you do nothing.
Really?
And like, not only do you like have to do exercise all day, you get up really early, and then you go, oh, let's go out late, especially if you're with your mates. And
I went
when you pass 40, it's insane.
I went with my old schoolmates, and only four of us. I thought we were quite well behaved, but Dan, one of my best mates, he fell out, tripped on the ice in the car park and cracked 4 ribs. And then Jamie skied for 20 minutes on the first day, and they said, not for me. Like the first day of a skiing holiday, not for me, and refused to go. And then 2 of the others, we got a really bad flu. And
brilliant.
So we were like absolutely
so you came back
absolutely
refreshed.
Broken. Yeah. It took me a week. It took me a week to recover. And anyway, that's why we didn't do a podcast. There was no way I was going to do a podcast last Monday. There was zero chance it was going to happen. But I feel fine now. I feel great.
The podcast editor was quite happy. He had nothing to do. Had a week off.
What? No podcast? Yeah,
I know. He never says anything if I don't give him an episode because I think he thinks that if he asks, there might be one who might create one out of nowhere. It's like if he doesn't ask, then it's like he doesn't do anything. So, like, do you want to introduce what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah. Just turn my
we'll go for it.
Down slow. Yeah. So we're going to record an episode about one of the first KPIs that I think we started talking about very, very early on, and it's just to revisit the topic to decide whether or not we still talk about it, and if it's so big in our horizon that it was, and it's the add to basket stat or the add to cart stat. And it was one of the things that I think when we started talking about it, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, maybe longer, 10 years ago.
2019. It was the first podcast we ever did in 2019.
But that was the first podcast that we did, but we were talking about it for years before that. It became a little bit more mainstream because Shopify added it as a metric. You could see the add to cart stat. Anyway, the truth of it is, and there's a part of me that says the reason why we don't talk about it as much is because we're bored of talking about it. And that's not a reason not to talk about it. But there are certain times where we get we have a breakthrough where we see a certain metric that we really focus on, and it's exciting for us. And things that are exciting for us, even though we're quite famous for not going after the shiny thing, there is an element that we can only talk about the add to cart stat for so long until we get bored of it. But I would say, going back to the first podcast that we did, the add to cart stat, it was almost our default starting point when we were trying to grow the revenue of the site, and it isn't now. It is part of our armory. But it's like if I'm going into an e-commerce brand and they say, right, we want to grow our add to basket stat, the first question I used to ask, probably 10 years ago, was, well, what's your add to cart percentage? Now, that's not my first question now. My first question now is, what is your new customer ROAS and your cost of acquisition, and what could it be? And that's my first question. So it has changed, but it is still there. And without looking at the add to cart stat, it's quite hard to understand how to improve the conversion rate. But conversion rate in its own has also become a stat that we've not talked about as much, because as soon as the conversion rate goes up, we want to exploit it and pull it back down. But so we have talked about that. But generally, that was my starting point. It's part of. It was very exciting for us and relevant at the time. 10 years ago, we talked about it a lot. I think people did latch onto it, but we haven't talked about the add to cart stat for a long time, have we?
No, and I think the reason it's changed is because if you worked with us in 2019, God, it sounds like a long time ago, and it is a long time ago, 2019, and our own sites, we'd have approached them as conversion rate issues. So we would have gone, right, no matter what, we're going to come and we're just going to improve the conversion rate of this site. We're just going to go and get more sales from us. And I think, to be honest, like, who wouldn't want more conversions from the same traffic? Like that is something that's still relevant. But where we would kind of start and end almost with conversion rate optimization and revenue per visitor, that would be the start and the finish of the conversation back then. But now it's a symptom, and it's a part of a tool that we would use in a box. So it's got much wider than that. So we are looking at, effectively, we've moved to much more about optimizing profitability. So if I was going to get 50 grand's worth of profit out of the business at an add to cart rate of 3, and I was going to get 20 grand out of the business at an add to cart rate of 10, I'd take the lower add to cart rate. So effectively, you kind of need to know what you're doing with what traffic, so that when you come to the add to cart rate, you can understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you're optimizing it. So, whilst everybody should improve their add to cart rate and understand what it is, as we've been around e-commerce, that we've zoomed out so much more, because there's so many other things that are important to the business of profitability, rather than, effectively, we were talking about things from a conversion rate optimization agency. Like, a conversion rate optimization agency would come in and they would improve the conversion rate. They wouldn't care about profitability. They wouldn't care about models, the margin, like what products to bring on board and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of the way we were looking for it. And in our journey to sell more products on our own stores and obviously on our client stores, we've had to learn a lot more stuff, and also not necessarily learn lots of stuff, but kind of learn how to teach it, because it's all very well doing it yourself. It's another thing teaching stuff. So what we thought we'd do is we'd revisit some of their old podcasts, not some of the really boring ones. Like, I can see the next one, maybe in about 5 episodes, is how to do an online DIY store, and that got like 55 listens at the beginning. It's like not the most exciting topic, but some of the ones that we revisit. So, and I've given you a synopsis of the podcast. Yeah. So, obviously, we're now talking about add to cart rate in a different way. But let's say if we were going to talk about add to cart rate today, what you would talk about. Yeah. I'm going to let you speak now.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, appreciate that.
That's all right.
Because if I don't butt in, I never get in. And then you accuse me of over-talking you. Over-talking
I can edit you out later on if you just...
The only feedback I get from Mark on the podcast is, you know what, you just scratch your microphone with your chin. That's it. That's all I get. I think you learn the art of...
What else do you need?
Well, I need validation, support.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry.
So, no, nothing. You obviously get our sense of...
Should have had a sister.
compliments from our father, who was famous for pointing out our inadequacies as children. This is going to make us better. Anyway, what I was going to say about the add to cart was the context, like the original foundation, the fundamental of why we were focusing on the add to cart stat or the add to basket stat was thus, right? We wanted to improve the conversion rates because we wanted to get a higher return on ad spend. And if if you say to somebody, you need to improve the conversion rate, it was a bit like, and it still is, it's a bit like saying, just be more successful, just get more sales. It's really unhelpful. It's like, how do you improve the conversion rate of a shop? Right, well, it depends on how many people are coming in, how many people are getting to the front door, how many people are putting something in the basket, how many people are like dropping, like where, and that was the original philosophy of it. And we broke the conversion rate down into 3 parts. How many added to cart? How many went from cart to basket? How many went from basket to checkout? Actually, and that's not right, is it? It was how many added to cart? How many went from cart to the checkout? How many went from checkout to order? The reason that's confused me is because because the Americans, we've switched cart to basket, basket to cart. We always used to call it add to basket. So let's go back to our English say. It's how many people added to basket, how many people went from basket to checkout, how many people went from checkout to order. And that we broke it down to those 3 parts. And the original stats was an 11% add to basket, a basket to checkout rate of 44%, and a checkout to order rate of 85%. That was our original KPIs. And so if you're trying to improve the conversion rate, you have to see how you compare against those 2. And a lot of the time we saw, and it's still the case, that ads, Google ads and Meta ads are driving people, particularly Google ads, Google shopping ads, is driving people to the product page. So we found that the bounce rate was massive. Like there's a bounce rate, huge bounce rate problem. And so we said if we reduce the bounce rate, we'll increase the navigational flow, we'll increase the add to cart, we'll increase the add to cart, we'll increase conversion. If we increase conversion, we'll increase return on ad spend, and therefore we can scale up. And that's still correct. And there's still a lot of mistakes we still see that people make on their e-commerce site is they're assuming people are landing on the homepage. Still, I mean, in 2025, it's still a massive error that people make is they don't realise that people land on the product page. That's the biggest. If you sum all the product pages up together, it's one of the biggest landing pages. And they miss 2 things. They miss the positioning, so the busy restaurant test of who we are, and they miss the navigational flow. So they miss the breadcrumbs at the top of the product page on the mobile. And I think it's a long time since we looked at desktop first. Like that's 10 years ago. Like we only ever look at the mobile product page as our default. So if we could optimize one page.
Unless it's B2B.
Unless it's B2B. And if we could optimize one, biggest bang for our buck would be the mobile product page, because that in 99% of the time is the landing page that we're throwing paid traffic at. Not always, but if it's a Google Shopping business, definitely. So that's why it's still relevant. And it's like if you're trying to improve it, you have to look at the bounce rate. I had a site today that add to cart was I had a site today that had an add to cart of 3%, and it had a basket to order rate, which is where we combine the cart and the order together, of 67%. So it's clearly an add to cart issue. If we want to improve conversion rate, there's no point focusing on the basket or the checkout, because we've got a 67% completion, and the average is about 40. So there's no point looking there. So it is the add to cart, and it really helps you understand where they're landing. And for them, it was a positioning and a navigational flow problem. Anyway, it's still very relevant. And just because it's not revolutionary in our minds, it's not like that's not necessarily. This is why it's nice to revisit some of the old concepts, because it is still key.
Yeah. Well, when you join the community program and when we do the deep dive, do it with people, we would always go through this at first, because there's always changes that we can make very quickly that are going to get the add to basket rate up, which will increase the conversion rate. And yes, we talk about increasing the average order value, but the average order value is not as elastic as conversion rate. So you can double or even triple a conversion rate, but you can't double or triple an average order value if you were selling socks, for example. You most people are going to buy, if some people are buying 2 pairs of socks, you could get a proportion of them to buy 3 pairs of socks. It's very unlikely you're going to get everybody to buy 6 pairs of socks, like every single customer. So like average order value, whilst you can get gains on it, decent level of gains, the conversion rate is the most elastic. And I think a lot of people have found it very easy, not very easy. The big idea for them was that if things aren't working, like just focusing on the add to basket rate at the beginning gives you real focus. So like when we first started the bedding site right at the beginning, all we were focusing on was the add to basket rate, because we knew our pricing, we knew what our average order value was going to be roughly, and we knew it would get better as the trust came in. So it came down to, can I get the add to basket rate up to a certain level? And you can see very quickly, where we're iterating through different offer architecture and different positioning and different trust levels and different messaging, how that affected the add to basket, add to cart rate. And you knew where and also, if you think about it, you get usually 2 to 3 times as many people adding to cart as actually checking out due to the stats. And so you're getting a lot more data to play with to work out whether that was the right change or not.
The equivalent would be if you had a physical store and you're trying to improve the conversion rate, you are stood behind the till. You're behind the desk and only focusing on trying to improve the people who are already in front of you, probably about to buy. Whereas there's a load of people that have come in the shop, had a quick look and then left. And there's a lot more people there. So in terms of your bang for the buck, and it's also it's as a metric. And I think it's like, this is the mistake as well. I think lots of people, when they're first getting into trying to improve the conversion rate, is they think we've got to sort the checkout out, because that's clearly what's going to have a big impact. By the time they get into the checkout, they've gone through all of the processes of like what it is, do I trust you, when's it going to arrive, what's return policy. Like, they either buy or they don't. There's not much persuasion that you can give them really, other than what you try and do is get the average order value up at that stage. But
you're
it's
only going to increase
stage.
it by 10%. So if you've only got 1 order a month, you're only going to get 1.1 order a month if you increase the checkout by 10%.
And there's so much you can do. There's so many elements to the add to basket stat or the add to cart stat, which is the same thing basically. But just to confirm, in England we say basket, in America we say cart, but because we're becoming American, we keep saying cart, but it's the same. It's the add to basket stat. I presume everybody.
I don't know what we say in New Zealand, to be honest. We just probably say bag.
Follow.
Yeah, do whatever you want. Call it whatever you want. We're not bothered.
Yeah. Well, it could be an add to bag, but yeah, there's so much to it, and I think if you focus on, I suppose from a conversion rate really, if you focused on that, and you were just getting into conversion optimization, it would still be where we would look, because it's harder, because there's a lot more to it.
And I think, like, if you look at that first podcast, looking at the synopsis of it, I think we went everywhere. We covered lots of different things based on, because it was the first podcast. It was like, I don't know what to do in a podcast. I'm just going to say everything I possibly know about e-commerce would just come out.
Well, it was only you and I chatting at that point.
Yeah, we didn't think anyone would listen to it. I did think it was funny, like 3 episodes after we started, we had a listeners' questions podcast. It's like, by which stage I don't think we had any listeners' questions. So I must listen to that and just think, you're clearly making these listeners' questions up. David Newcastle wants to know this. God knows who was asking questions, if there were. But what is interesting is that in that first podcast, we were kind of talking about the type of traffic you're getting. So there's like the short sessions and long sessions, which kind of alludes to, the thing we do in the deep dive with the level 2 people, where we go and look at their session length and also their pages per visit, which gives you like which of the quadrants they're in. So like, are they fast buyers? Are they slow buyers? Are they reviewers? And I think that alludes to, like, before you even, let's say your add to basket rate isn't brilliant, but you've done a lot of the things that you think you can do on the checklist, then you would look at the bounce rate, because our next episode after these ones was on bounce rate. And so we're kind of then alluding to the fact that how people buy is important, because you can't, like just having a better returns policy and making the quick buy on the page, not quick buy, but like quick pay and those kind of things aren't really, they're not game changers, because if you haven't, dealt with the issues that people have when they land on the site, or positioned yourself in the right place, I think that's where we were saying. So you can dive into like a product page checklist. Like, so we did it, recently we did that workshop on product page where, we were talking about what was happening. We talked about the busy restaurant test. But ultimately, if people are bouncing away because they don't think you are the right person to spend 6 minutes of their life with looking at the site, then you're not going to get the sell. So we kind of,
well, I think we
talked about this, and then we immediately went and did one on bounce rate.
On bounce rate. Well, that's probably right, to be honest. But this is where our 6 dominoes of e-commerce really sort of merged itself into as well, didn't we? Because, in order to improve, when we were first, if you could turn back the clock, 10 or 20 years, e-commerce was dominated by techies, devs. And there was and for very good reason, that the technology was not accessible and easy like it is now with Shopify. So you had to have devs, and devs were leading the conversation. So, there was this philosophy that who had the best devs would grow in e-commerce. And to a certain extent, that was true 20 years ago, because, they were, awful, these websites, and if you could make a website that people could use quickly and navigate and find the product, you actually did have a competitive advantage. And so I think that conversation has totally changed in the majority of e-commerce spaces, apart from some some very sort of niche areas. But anyway, there's still a little bit of that sort of like dev mathematical approach where you want to scale your e-commerce business, you've got to improve your add to basket stat. Now that's true, but it's not how people buy. And I think we've leaned much more into the emotional aspects of is it an emotional desirability play? Is it a rational purchase? What is the busy restaurant test? What is the navigational flow? What is the job to be done? The anxiety, the trust, credibility, the offer architecture. So it's all there, but it was just part of, I think, laying it out. But my opinion is, it's still very relevant, but it isn't our go-to, like, number one stat. And a lot of the time, our immediate response is, if we get the add to basket up and we get the conversion rate up, we hammer it with more ads because we want to exploit it.
Which brings it down again.
Which brings it down. So, and I think it's probably quite rare, but there will be people listening to this who will be saying, "Oh my God, I've got a really high conversion rate," or aren't I great? And we hopefully, if there is a message that we tell our coaching clients, that that's like opening your shop, for a couple of hours a day and then shutting the door when there's a queue of people waiting to try to get in.
Just to optimize your conversion rate. It's like, we only open when there's a queue of 100 people outside, because then the conversion rate goes up to like 100%, and so therefore we'll shut the shop the other times because we have conversion rate. It's like it's not the reason you open the shop in the first place, is it? To have a high conversion rate. You open the shop in the first place to provide a lifestyle for your family and to take over the world with donut shops.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But so I mean, ultimately, if we can get more revenue out of that store visit, it means that we can afford to pay more for the ads and make much more profit, and scale. So we'll immediately exploit it.
Yeah, you've got to realize that, it's all very well having a benchmark in year one when you're spending 10 grand a month on ads, but when you're spending 100 grand a month on ads, like, you have to change those benchmarks accordingly as the traffic scales, because like it's not going to be the same. I think I remember going to someone in the UK, really big catalog company, and we were talking about these things, and he says, "Oh, I get a 10% conversion rate. I'm a genius, blah blah blah, from the catalog." And it's like, well, of course you're going to get a higher conversion rate. The only people that come to the site are people who've read the catalog, decided what they're going to buy, and they're going to buy the product. I mean, why else would they go from the catalog, which is the only way to find out about the website, and go to the website to buy something? And in fact, in that case, probably a 10% conversion rate is probably quite low, because otherwise, what the hell are they doing? 90% of people who look at the catalog go online with the intention to buy, aren't buying. So it's really understanding what you're trying to do and why, and what makes sense in terms of, like, again, like we talked about profit velocity. Profit velocity is the main KPI that I'm looking at now. It's like, if I am running at this level, what level of profit will I have this time next year? You know, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? By how much? What's going to happen if I make these decisions? And so I think that the Hammersley Brothers podcast has evolved from very much focusing on, like, let's get some quick wins on the conversion rate, to like, let's have a look at this as a business, to build something that is exitable, even if we don't want to sell it, because you want to build a business that someone else would want to own. Because if someone else wants to own the business, that means you've got a good business that you would want to own yourself, even if you don't want to sell it. So yeah, that's what we're talking about. And we were talking about rational, emotional purchases. We were talking about, delivery policies and price and returns, and all the stuff we talked about, still talk about still, because they are checklists to go through. And something silly, like, a lot of the time, when you're correcting those things at the beginning, like, there are those silly little frictions that people have in place that they can't see because they're just too close to the website. Like, they've made the offer
put them
too
in
difficult
the wrong place. You know? They haven't got the delivery information there, or they haven't got the returns policy, or they've got this killer, like, guarantee warranty, but it's hidden, up in the header or down in the footer, and you can't see it on the product page. There's a load of little bit. To be honest, I mean, every time we do the product page workshop, there's always some absolute, like, low-hanging, like, obvious things that we do still pick out. So it's still very, very much relevant for people. If nobody has done the product page, workshop, I mean, they should come. We did one, didn't we? When it's in the...
Yeah, everybody on the community has got access to the workshops, and everybody on level 2 has got access to those workshops. So the way they work is, when we're about to do workshops, we sometimes offer guest passes to those workshops. They're paid guest passes. We'll do them for 100 or 300. After they're recorded, they go onto the website, but they go up to a much higher price. So if you want to get into, see all the content, you should just join the community, or level 2 if you need more access to us. And they're there. The community does close occasionally, and also level 2, we do have a limit on how many we can take on. So we'd have to let you know whether they're open or not. But if you want to get on the waiting list, there's actually a waiting list on the Hammersley Brothers site. So if you go to hammersleybrothers.com, I'll just check it's still there. If you go to hammersleyBrothers.com, and then, there's a program waitlist at the moment. So if you click on program waitlist, that you can join the waitlist for the community, and that means you get all the workshops at a very good price, and also you get to be part of the community, which is awesome. Some amazing people in that. Like this week, they've been talking about the new changes on the Klaviyo changes, change the way they're pricing. They've been talking about the offers they've been working at the moment. Lots of stuff cool, good stuff going on in there. So
sounds like a hard sell.
Well, it shouldn't be hard. It's a good product. And you know me, like, if anyone ever gets me on a sales call, it's difficult because I don't do sales calls, but I'm a terrible salesman. I'll be like, just buy it. I just get it for free. I don't need to charge you. I'm ridiculous. I'll just give them the answers. Yeah.
It's good.
So So
All right.
I guess we'll go through some of the podcasts and try and see how we update them in the future and see what interests us, because there's a lot there. I mean, we've been doing them since 2019, which is it's about 6 years, which is insane. I think we're on episode like 240 or something. And what is good is like, particularly if people know us, is contrast. Like as I follow a guru and I pay for his time and I put on his program. And what's most useful for me is when he changes something and why he changes something. Because I think there's a lot of, you'll be doing something and you'll be rolling out with something. And when he changes something, I'm like, well, I can see you've changed something, but why did you change that? That's interesting to me is what's changed in the market, what's changed in your thinking to facilitate you doing this new membership level, or changing the way you communicate what you're doing and what's moving, because like that gives you contrast, and then once you've got contrast, you can then probably understand the original thing better as well, because you can see what's changing and why, and then you can see what you were doing before.
I think that's a really good point, and I think actually by focusing on something that's changing, it's a bit more important, because sometimes it's hard if you're just listening to a podcast. You just think, well, are they just talking about that because they're talking about that at that particular moment? Or is it actually relevant right now? Is it a big thing? And I think that is quite difficult for people to navigate. There's a lot of noise out there. What do I need to listen to? What are the things that are really, really important right now? So I think probably actually talking about the things, how we have changed our mind, or something has become more important or less important. Why that is, and what's changing about it. So, I'll be looking forward to doing these in the next couple of months.
I would argue that we are a lot more helpful now than we were in 2019. Not because we were bad, but just because of, 6 years of seeing so many e-commerce businesses and seeing what's working, and also by doing this process, learning how to teach what we know is difficult at the beginning, because you just do it.
I think you're doing all the workshops that we've done in the community. When you're putting a workshop together, you have to break a subject down into a framework and a structure and a process. You can't just say, sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. You have to put it into a structure, because you want people to be able to follow it and replicate it. And that's also part of the understanding. That's
definitely
fun.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ian. I'll speak to you next week.
Cheerio, Mark.
Yeah. Cheers,
Enjoy
guys.
your week. Bye.